audio yet, right?
No.
Gone.
Because we are recording as well as we will be in about a minute. Another housekeeping note, the restrooms are out the door to your left. There are 3x5 cards on your table for you to fill out if you have questions. If we don't get to you tonight, we do not have another mic. So when you have a question, we ask that you come here to this mic to ask your question. Okay, are there any questions before we get started? Thank you so much. Be back shortly. This is the presenter table. Let me see what pops up. I'm gonna be shocked. Oh, look at us.
So it is the CICF?
This is so fun.
Oh, wow. It's so fun.
Let me tell her.
Look, I need to get a drink. Real one.
Can you give me some water?
Right. What's happening right now? What's not at this point? He said he was in.
Can you push this? Can you push this out on Facebook? Because we're on Facebook. Thank you. Good evening again. My name is Alicia Collins. I'm with the Indianapolis Foundation, and this is the second info session on the Elevation Grant Program. And we are going to get started. Everyone should have a handout that you picked up from the registration. So welcome again. And if you're on Facebook, you can go to CICF, our Facebook page. We ask that you share Facebook Live so that others in the community can also be a part of the meeting. Thank you. Can I have slide 3, please? So I'm going to introduce the presenters for tonight. Myself, Alicia Collins, Pamela Ross, if you could wave your hand or stand up. She's Vice President of Community Leadership and Equitable Initiatives with the Indianapolis Foundation. Allison Parham Small. She's President of Partech Consulting Group. Beth Milliken, Senior Accountant with the Central Indiana Community Foundation. So we'll all be with you tonight. Next slide. Our agenda for tonight is as follows. We'll go over ground rules, followed by session objectives. We're also going to talk about the Indianapolis Foundation, our history, and the connection to the Elevation Grant Program. We're going to highlight this new grant program with you. Going to give you some consideration before pursuing the opportunity, the timeline. We will have some grant preparation clinics for those who may find it overwhelming with grant writing. We're not going to write it for you, but we're going to answer questions and dive into some of the application questions so that you can be familiar with what's on it. And then we'll take questions. Next slide, please. These are community ground rules that we use. And so I just wanted to also bring this here with everyone tonight, just to listen for understanding. We all come with different experiences, expertise, and backgrounds, so just want to respect all levels of differences, awareness, and experiences. 3 and then me. Does anybody know what 3 and then me is? No? Take a guess. 3 and then me? I thought you were raising your hand. 3 and then me is once you speak, we ask that you allow 3 other people to speak after you. That way, no one is taking up all of the floor time with questions and everyone gets an opportunity to raise their question. So that's the 3 and then me. And then if we do not get to your question, we ask that you put it down on the 3x5 card. Next slide. Today we want to cover, again, the purpose of the Elevation Grant Program, the requirements, and then share information about resources and supports. Okay? So I'm just going to take a minute because we have been rushing from our day job or from whatever you've been doing all day, and I just want to take 30 seconds just for everybody just to close their eyes, center themselves, and I just ask that you either call on, I'm a person of faith, so God, but whoever your higher power is, and we ask for just positive energy to come into this space, so just 30 seconds, just to pause. Thank you. Okay, are we ready? Yes? Yes? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Next slide, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us this evening. So I'm Pamela Ross. As Alicia had mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Community Leadership and Effective. No, that was what was before. We start that again. Community Leadership and Equitable Initiatives. I have been with CICF for, this is going into my 6th year. I have been at a leadership level, vice president level for the last 4. This year I shifted over into different responsibilities where I'm now, hi Kelly, the vice president over all of the Indianapolis Foundation grant making and community leadership. So a wonderful opportunity to move what I was already doing in my previous role was as the Opportunity, Equity, and Inclusion, the first vice president at CICF in that role, and my role was across all departments to ensure, push, challenge systems, institutional systems to help to make sure, which we are still working on, that we would become an anti-racist, multicultural organization. So the work is built into how are we changing our policies and how are we changing the systems in which our organization operates. And so it is still very much a long haul, but I need for you all to do everything that you can, including using your voice, and even in places where you are dissatisfied with things that we're doing, to help us move and to help us move together. We are, next slide, please. We are this year a 106-year-old organization. We were founded in 1916. We are the only community foundation older than us is Cleveland Foundation, and they were started in 1914. So we have 106 years of being a white power, white-led organization that 4 years ago went out and said, you know, enough is enough. The stats, the data in our community says that we cannot continue to operate under status quo. So we hope that tonight you see some essence of that work. We have been, our wonderful partner in good, Lauren Rodriguez is here to testify. If you were trying not to be shown here to be Lauren. We've been in negotiation of our contract, and we still have, in all transparency, still have yet to sign on the dotted line. But we know that we are in a much stronger partnership than we have ever been. And we look forward to what this new framework that you will hear about tonight, a new name that Alicia will talk about more, what this work has meant has not been focused on us, but hopefully you will see that it has been focused on you and all the work that you do every day and that we want to honor and get to know more of. The Indianapolis Foundation, most of you will speak of the work that you hear about happening through CICF, Central Indiana Community Foundation. CICF was founded in 1997 as a merge or a partnership, a joining of Marion County, so the Indianapolis Foundation, and Hamilton County Community Foundation. We've done some restructuring internally, and so CICF, Central Indiana Community Foundation, is kind of an umbrella of several affiliates, including Women's Fund, Hamilton County Community Foundation, Impact Central Indiana, and the Indianapolis Foundation. So we're also trying to make sure that we're identifying where this particular work is coming from, and all the work that we are doing in Marion County is focused through and administered through the Indianapolis Foundation, so not necessarily CICF. They support us though, or we're all together, I should say. Next slide, please. So our mission in 2018 was, as I kind of alluded to, is that we needed to do more, and we needed to be more focused, and we needed to start to really narrow in what is it that who are we trying to support, who are we trying to come alongside. So we changed our mission, and again, being at that point 101-year-old, white-powered, white institution, changing our mission, going through the board to do that wasn't an easy feat, but it was necessary. So the work that we do now, every day, is grounded in this mission: to mobilize people, ideas, and investments, to make sure that we have a community where everyone has an equitable opportunity to reach their full potential, no matter race, place, or identity. We have values that we are striving for every day: anti-racism, authentic relationships, inclusivity, leadership, effectiveness, and sustainability. Each of those has a specific focus in each of our departments. But the reason why I would say like the anti-racism is probably first, as well as authentic relationships being second, is because those are the two things probably that we hone in the most every single day in our conversations. So it's one thing to say, I'm not a racist, or my organization or my company is not a racist, but it's another thing to actually every day challenge and fight those things that create racist systems. So racism, systemic racism, is a structure. So we all have to understand that every single day when we go into our institutions, we are to challenge those systems to make sure that everyone does have an opportunity, and to make sure that the systems that we work in are not utilizing us to perpetuate systemic practices. So that's why anti-racism is one of our tops, and then authentic relationships is more about how are we getting out to the community, how are we making sure that people do not have to come into our building, how are we getting beyond how do we know you through a proposal, but how do we actually get in the community, know what the community is doing, and then come alongside to support. So this evening, hopefully you'll see more of that. We really do encourage you to, as I said in the beginning, to come alongside us as well, help us to learn, challenge us respectfully, and we will do the same. But let's try to figure out how we can break up some of the same status quo that has been going on and start to honor those who are actually doing the work every single day and allocate dollars in a way that will actually make a real change. So I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia, and again, we thank you for being here.
Thanks, Pam. So next slide, please. We're going to get into the grant program. So we'll talk about the purpose, outcomes, interest areas, eligible organizations, funding rounds, release date, and the federal requirements. So the next slide. Next one, please. This PowerPoint will also be uploaded to the website so that you will be able to download it after tonight. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have any changes. So if you have questions, or last Thursday, we got challenged on some terminology and we changed it. And that would also be changed in our request for proposal. So this is a living document. So if there's some things that you would like to see changed or adapted, those are welcomed at this time as well. So this Elevation Grant Program is a new name, and I'll give a little bit of history about that in a minute. But first, I just want to say that this is a more comprehensive framework. So we have $15 million. That's a lot of money. Prior to $15 million, we had $3 million. And as the data changed in terms of who was being impacted by violence and homicides, gun violence specifically, then our program changed to be able to shift towards violence reduction. So we had $3 million last year. Those dollars were earmarked towards more of a violence reduction approach. With the $15 million now, the city, Lauren Rodriguez and her team from the city are leading the gun violence reduction work. We are complementing that work with this grant program. What that means is we are not just going to focus on violence reduction strategies and intervention. We're going to open it up to prevention, which we haven't done in a long time. Tyrone Chandler, that is like your work. You're doing in Riverside and those things. So if I know you, I'm going to call you out. Just warning. So those opportunities are available for this round, as well as we're adding community building. My background is grassroots organizing. So that means that activities around bringing residents together at the block level will now be considered, okay? And then we're also going to have additional opportunities around restoration and resilience. I see We Bloom here, so like the recovery cafes would be an opportunity for you to get in. So our outcomes for this new grant program, we're not just going to focus on just the violence, but the root causes. So those are things around poverty, Those are things around systemic issues around neighborhood disinvestment. That means that we're gonna have to partner with larger systems as well around community development issues if we're really gonna tackle this thing called violence. We wanna see an uptick in resident-led solutions. Mr. Malachi and I go way back when we had a lot of crime watch groups. Remember those? But you can do block parties. They just have to be ongoing. They have to be focused also about increasing neighborhood safety. So we'll get into some of those specifics. Pam brought up that we are learning. Discovery is going to be a big part of this work, especially for round one. There are a lot of things that we do not know. Innovation also includes things you don't know that's already been there, but it's new to you, so that's innovation to you. That's where we are as a foundation. We don't know what's happening in every neighborhood, every side of town. So discovery is going to be a big part of that. Infrastructure development. That's the same word that we used to call capacity building. We no longer say capacity building because that means that you're lacking something. Infrastructure development is around investing in the infrastructure of the organization so that you can move forward based on the things that you need, not what we say you need. And then the last one is the direct feedback from the community and goes to the name change. There needs to be a new narrative around this work. Neighborhoods are tired of being labeled as a deficit. And so the Elevation Grant Program was named by community people because they are tired of being labeled. This grant should also bring aspiration and hope and dreams and opportunities to the work, to the residents that you are supporting. You should be elevating not just your organization, but the people that you're serving. And there should be a new sense, a new energy of hope and aspirations that we would like to see come forth. We can get numbers all the time, but what do the numbers say and mean? What's underneath those numbers? In my old work, what's the story behind the data? But you say that all the time. Okay, so we want you to tell your story from a lens of assets and aspirations. I don't think I'm taking questions yet. Next slide, I'll see what's next. Oh, so these are the areas, 5 areas. So these 5 areas will be covered for the whole entire year. Thriving neighborhoods is community building, empowered youth, that's work through prevention. Restoration and resilience, that is around not just therapeutic, but also healing communities. That could look like meditation circles, could look like yoga sessions in neighborhoods. We would have to, discover that with you. Intervention, those are traditional programs that we currently fund. Those are your reentry programs. Are those individuals that are connected to the juvenile justice system? So we're funding a lot of those. And then violence reduction, that is working with a specific population that is connected to gun charges or connected to an individual that has been shot. They have a really extensive history to the criminal justice system. So those are the 5 areas comprehensively. Next slide. So this is the breakdown of round 1 and round 2. We are currently in round 1, and we will focus on thriving neighborhoods, empowered youth, restoration and resilience, 5.5 million, Round two, 8.45 million, I can't say big numbers. And then you have all of the categories represented there. If we do not expend all the funds from round one, they will roll over to round two. I see your hand. Next slide. And these are just key dates and the grant preparation clinics. Next slide. Mr. Ivy, you want to come up here and ask your question?
So on the previous slide, I see you have Empower Youth round one, but it doesn't say prevention. So is that?
That is prevention. Yes.
Yeah, that's not on. No.
That is not on. Is that supposed to be on?
Hello. Okay, so my question was on funding rounds and allocation slide. On the first round, it had empowered youth, but on the second round, it indicates prevention. So I wanted to see, was it prevention for the first round as well?
You caught our error. We meant to take prevention off of the second slide. So empowered youth is the same for prevention. And that is where we got pushback at the last meeting to take prevention off, okay? So another component of information that you don't have is that we will have the RFP up on Friday. It will have more detailed information about each of these categories, okay? More questions?
So in the work that we've been doing with technology and youth, one of the barriers that we're finding out is mental health. And so we've been talking and to some individuals to figure out what we could try to do about it. And so we would like to do like some talking circles. Where would that fit into if your category is something that deals with youth?
It's a great question. So Mr. Chandler is talking about, they do technology, that's the foundation of your programming. Is that prevention? I would just put in the circles in that existing program, okay? So now the mic in the center works. So ma'am, if I can have you. Oh, they come to me still? Okay.
Thank you. It was just a question for clarification. You mentioned that the RSP will be up. What does that stand for? Thank you.
RFP stands for Request for Proposal, and that's an invitation. So RFP, Request for Proposal, that's an invitation for you to apply. That's a technical term that we use that we need to get rid of. Any more questions? You guys are so quiet. Is it Monday? Okay, it's Monday. We'll give it to you. So now Miss Allison will come up.
Now, I have to figure out, huh? No, the next slide. But I got to figure out which glasses I need. I need this one for the distance, and then I got to have this one to see up close. No, I don't want bifocals, okay? I know I need them. My name is Allison Parham Small. I am a consultant. I have the honor and opportunity to work with the team from the Indianapolis Foundation. I've been a consultant working with nonprofits all across the country for the past 36 years, had my practice for 27. Some of you might have been in some of the training that we did last year and earlier this year. And so my job today is to walk you through the requirements to get you ready for the opportunity. So as we mentioned earlier, we will have a grant preparation clinic, but there are some things that are a little different this time around for this particular opportunity. So I'm gonna need y'all to pull out your pens because you're gonna have to take some notes to make sure that there are some things that you're gonna check off as we go into kind of getting ready for this opportunity. So let's, and I gotta tell you, this is like literally the first time I don't have control over my slides. So anyway, so first and foremost, you must have an organization that is registered in Marion County, or you're partnering with an organization that is based in Marion County, and you must be a 501c3. Okay? Keep going. So now, this is an interesting slide. We probably should have advised you to get some coffee before you started to read it. But this is all the federal language that basically says there are some guidelines around how grantees can spend the money. And so it literally conforms to the uniform guidance. We're actually going to have a workshop this Thursday, I knew that, that's going to actually walk you through the budget requirements. If you have not had experience applying for a federal grant before, I would highly encourage you to put that on your calendar. It is a Zoom call because you're going to really want to understand what are some of the nuances associated with this opportunity. And so we'll talk more about some of those dates in a minute. But basically, for this particular grant, we have to ensure that organizations are complying with guidelines that the feds have set up, okay? And so we'll kind of walk you through it. It explains what you can and you can't spend the money on, which may be a little different from your experiences with other funders. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we will go into more detail on the 31st, okay? But I want to say this right now because some of you are thinking this is a wonderful opportunity, and it is absolutely a wonderful opportunity. Many of you have been doing work in the community for a very long time, may not have gotten the level of recognition that is deserved. Here's an opportunity to kind of scale up what it is that you're doing because there are so many different categories, but there are a couple of things associated with this. Some of you are going to say right off the bat, I don't know how to write a grant. I've never written a grant before, right? And so the reality is that you might be tempted to say, well, let me go out and hire a grant writer. Okay? Anybody thinking about that? Okay. Okay. Somebody said no, because it costs money, right? But here's the thing that you want to keep in mind. For a federal grant, one of the restrictions is that you can't use the funds to pay for the grant writer. Okay? If you have other funds, you can pay all you want, but you can't use the actual grant to pay for the grant writer. You want to run if you are approached by a grant writer who offers to write this on a commission. Okay? Run. Not walk, run. You don't want to do that. Okay? But that's part of the reason why we set up the grant preparation clinic, because it is not your standard, you're going to come and we'll tell you, like the elements of the proposal. We will do that. But you are actually going to work on your own application. You're going to need to bring your laptops. And as I told the group before, you're going to need to bring a power cord and an extension cord because we'll be in there for 3 hours. And the 3 hours will actually go by fast, okay? Bring your coffee, Red Bull, whatever you need to kind of keep you going, okay? We can go on. So, in order for you to be eligible for this opportunity, and this is not necessarily the Indianapolis Foundation or the city, but more so it's the feds, you have to be in good standing with the Internal Revenue Service, the state of Indiana, and then you have to be registered in SAMS, and I'll talk about that in a second. You can keep going. So, first thing up is there's a system that the federal government uses that's called SAMS. How many of you have heard of that? Okay, this is a system that the government uses that keeps track of every grant that they make, every grant, every contract. Everybody has to be registered into that system. If your organization is a 501c3, you have to enter information to get your SAMS number. And the SAMS system has just changed. At one point, they used to say you needed to have a DUNS number, which is a separate number, different from your employee identification number. But now they've come up with their own unique number. And so if you can believe this, they changed the rules March 22nd. Okay? Now, that's good news for you because that means you don't have to worry about running around trying to find the DUNS number. But Beth just sent me an email, and I thought this was like an April Fool's joke. Because last week we said to folks, you need to hurry up and start filling out the paperwork to get into SAMS, right? Because you need to get into the system before you start working on all of the narrative for the application. But guess what? They're closing the system down April 1st. I thought that was a joke, right? Like, really? But they're shutting it down because, come that Monday, the new system will be in place. So we're going to say this is something that you have to do. There's no point in rushing if your organization does not have a SAM, is not in the SAM system right now. But starting April 4th, you will need to start looking at what is required to become entered into that system. Some of you, your organizations may already be in the system, but you will need to check to make sure your information is still current, because every year you have to go and do some kind of update, okay? So if you know for a fact your 501c3 is not in SAMS, you will have to start on that April 4th, okay? And what they're gonna do is they're gonna start asking you for documentation regarding your tax status, your banking information. It's not that cumbersome, but it will take a minute, and it takes them time to process. And ultimately, you will be issued a number, another number, okay? And that's how they track anybody that applies and then ultimately is awarded, okay? So you can't get around that on this grant, okay? Because the Indianapolis Foundation can't get around it, and the city can't get around it. So this is one of your to-dos, is that you gotta check to see if your org is already in the system, and if it's not, then come April 4th, you're gonna have to start filling out the paperwork, okay? The other to check to make sure your org is in good standing with the Internal Revenue Service. For those of you who have a 501c3, some may not realize that if you are not filing your 990s, which is essentially the tax return for nonprofits, if you've not filed that in quite a bit, there's a high likelihood that IRS has revoked your status. So rather than wait until it is time to start uploading all of your stuff, you're gonna wanna check that now. You could actually go, if we turn the, see, that's why I need my click, right? There. Well, you can click past that too. Click past that too. I'll just come back to this one. So ultimately, let me just say this, and then I'll talk about how to check. Your organization will end up having two numbers. You'll have an EIN number, and if you are a nonprofit, you receive the EIN number when you ultimately registered as a corporation in the state of Indiana. That's the number that you use ultimately to pay taxes. I'm sure if you've applied for other grants, they may ask for that number, okay? So you gotta hold on to that number. That's the first one. The second one will be the number that gets issued when you enter into the SAMS.gov system, okay? So that one may take a minute, but as long as you're entering your information in the system, you'll be okay. We have provided a link for a video to show you how to walk through that particular application. That is not one to wait to the last minute, okay? Because like I said, it takes a minute. And if there's something that you enter that's incorrect, they'll send you a notice. You don't respond, they just keep moving, okay? So we gotta kind of stay on top of these things. So you'll have those two, and that's what you're gonna need in order to apply. Did I lose anybody so far? You see, you got some homework, right? Okay, let's keep going. Question. Oh, yes, ma'am. Now, do I have to stand, or does she have to come? I'm trying to find the rules here.
I think you can hear me.
Okay.
You need the room to hear me. I just want to make sure. Right now it says DUNS number on there, but that is going to be replaced with the SAM number, correct?
Yes. So right now, you can still have a DUNS number, and it doesn't hurt you. If you want to get a DUNS number, you could call up tomorrow and get a DUNS number. It's not a big deal. But as of April 4th, they're no longer going to require organizations to submit the DUNS number. So that's a wonderful thing. So if you have it now, that's great. If you don't have it, you can get it if you want it. DUNS number is just like like people will have a DUNS number, and It can be helpful, like if you're ever looking for a line of credit or something for your organization, but it's not an imperative for this application. Okay? Other questions? Was there another question? You sure? Okay. So this is how you get the DUNS. Again, wouldn't put this at the top of the list of things to do right now. SAMS is at the top of the list. Checking with the Internal Revenue Service. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this tells you everything it is you need to know about SAMS. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Just go to the link. It's self-explanatory. And they'll walk you through what it is that you need to have. Okay? You will need banking information though. And this is only applicable if your organization is a 501c3. Okay? So let's move on. Now we get to the IRS and whether your organization is still in good standings with the Internal Revenue Service. So you'll get a print off of this, but if you go to the link, you want to do the online search tool and put in your own organization's name. And it'll either pull up or it'll pull it up and it'll say, you know, dissolved or something that lets you know that there's an issue, okay? And again, you want to do this now. You could do it on your phone right now if you wanted to, but it is something that is imperative for you to know because what this means is that you may have, if you have not been filing your tax returns, you may have lost your tax status and you will not get it back in the time that it takes before this grant application is due, okay? And you can get it reinstated, but that takes a long time, right? So it's really important that you check that now. The Indianapolis Foundation will also have to come behind and they'll check. So it's not like you'll avoid this. So we just wanted to make sure you had a head start to know what's going on with your organization. Any questions about the IRS? How many of you have checked lately on your organization its tax status? Great. Couple of things to keep in mind. If organizations have to file a 990, but if you are under 50,000, it's simply a postcard, but you still have to file it. Okay, you don't have to put financials to it, but you still have to file it. Anything from 50 to 250, then you're filing the 990 EZ. You have to file that. And then after that, it's the full-blown 990. So if you've gone years without filing, then there is a potential that there's a problem there. Okay? So let's go ahead and check it out. Yes, ma'am.
Explain deeply or in depth about if you have not filed taxes. What about a person that don't have any federal tax to file?
Oh, no. So let me just clarify. So when I'm talking about filing the taxes, I'm only speaking to a nonprofit 501c3. This has nothing to do with you personally. It's just a 501c3. So like, for example, if we're filing our personal taxes, what is that, the 1040, right? Yeah, for nonprofits, it's called a 990, okay? But the key is you have to file it because the IRS will normally only give you so many months of no activity, and then they will assume that the organization is not really operating, and they can take steps to dissolve it. And sometimes, you know, their letters, like say, for example, you registered the organization and you filed your 1023 in one state and you moved. If you didn't move all of the paperwork with you, they could be sending you letters and you wouldn't know. Okay? So now's the time to check it out, to figure out what's going on with your organization. Any other questions about IRS? That's on the checklist of what we got to do before the RFP comes out. Indiana Secretary of State. This one is really important. So all business entities are required to submit a report to the state every year. Okay? So you're going to want to click on that link, type in your organization to see what the status of your organization. Have you filed? Are you current with your filings? Now, this, out of all of them, if you look and you find out it says, you know, that you haven't filed or whatever the notice is, it's not the end of the world. You just got to pull out your debit card, pay about $7 or whatever it is to get your stuff current, unless they've taken more advanced steps. okay? But you gotta check to see whether your entity is current with its reporting. So those are 3 checks that you have to take care of. IRS, the state, and then ultimately you'll get into the SAM system, and then you'll want to check to make sure everything is okay there. Okay? And this is before we even talk about what you're going to write about the wonderful work that you're doing. Okay? Let's see what's next. So, assuming that you're going to do all of this, now again, you won't be able to touch the SAM work until Monday, but the other things you could literally do this evening or tomorrow, okay, so that you know where you stand. So we are going to offer some grant preparation clinics, as I mentioned earlier. So we start with the budget one that's this Thursday. Why can't I get that date? This Thursday, okay? Now, here's the thing about grants. Some people spend all their time focusing in on the narrative. Got to tell the right story, right? And you got a beautiful story, but then you run out of time and your budget, 2 plus 2 is 6, okay? That counts. The budget has to tell the same story as the narrative, and it has to conform to what are the requirements by the agency, which in this case is the federal government, okay? So we're starting with the budget so that you can get an idea of what's going to be required. And let's face it, some of us are really good with numbers. Some of us are really good with, telling the story, okay? If you are the person that is not so strong with the numbers, you're going to need to make sure somebody else joins you on this call. It's a Zoom call. We won't even get to see your faces, but, it's a Zoom call. So you're going to have somebody, your accountant, your bookkeeper, your board treasurer, somebody who is comfortable with numbers, if that's not you, to join you for the budgeting. That's the first kind of infrastructure development workshop that will be offered to help organizations, okay? And there are some changes, so that's why this one is important. After that, we're going to go to the grant preparation clinics, and that's what I mentioned earlier. If you've made the decision that you're going to pursue this opportunity, and I hope you will, because it's a great opportunity, these clinics will be for you to come, and we will spend part of the time kind of breaking down, how do you put a proposal together to tell your story. And then we're going to break you into smaller groups so that you'll have a table that will be managed by a consultant that will field any question you have about how to put your application together, okay? And so what we recommend is, first and foremost, and I can't remember if we put it in the system, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it now. You wanna, if you're not in the Smart Simple system at the Indianapolis Foundation, you're gonna wanna take care of that right away too, okay? So as soon as the grant opportunity is released, you'll be able to go on, start loading up some of your data. For this type of an opportunity, because you have so many different pieces, this is not the wait to the last couple days and try to knock it out. This is not an all-nighter kind of event, okay? You are going to have to pace yourself because there are a lot of pieces that may be new to you, but you can do it. You don't necessarily have to have somebody else helping you, but you gotta be able to dedicate the time to it, okay? And that's what the clinics are about. But you gotta register for the clinics, because we only have so many slots, and we got to make sure we have enough seats for everybody. Now, here's a test. What did I say you need to bring to the grant preparation clinics? Yeah. Yeah, you got it all, right? Now, and when I say the extension cord, I'm talking about the one with the power strip, that because we never know how far the outlets will be in the facility. So you just got to be prepared. Don't just assume that your laptop will necessarily, hold for all 3 hours, okay? So you want to bring all of that. You will want to have read the RFP and start to highlight stuff so that you have questions, okay? This is not going to be the session where you're going to say, well, what should I write about? No. You will have read the RFP and you have an idea of which category you have an interest in pursuing. And then, the Indianapolis Foundation folks will be here as well to answer specific questions about each category. But we're going to literally take you through so that you can write your own application. Okay? Now, you're not going to walk away with a completely written application in 3 hours, right? But you will have the ideas, you will have bullet points of what needs to be expanded to be able to go back and finish it out. We are offering multiple sessions. I would recommend you get the first one, right? Because you're only losing time for the ones later on, okay? But you can sign up for whichever ones. I think we have one online too. Oh, so on the first one, we have one in person, which is in the afternoon from 12 to 3, and then that evening we'll have one online. Now, some of you are thinking, well, shoot, I'll just go to the one online, right? I'm going to suggest, because I will be there, that if you have the ability to show up, that you show up. Okay, the online is great if you have no other options, but I would encourage you, if you have the ability, to come to some of the clinics in person, because that way we can make sure we're answering all the questions that you may have, and you get a chance to hear other people's questions. Nope, that Thursday is the one online for budget. The grant preparation clinics start April 11th. It's a Monday. Let's click through. The one on Thursday is at 10 o'clock. And there's a link. Uh-huh.
Is it already online to register?
Yes. Yes. So how many have looked online to register for the budget one? Has anybody seen that one yet? Yes.
So the format or the template that you'll have in writing as well as the budget, is that for all of the grant makers under this?
Only for this.
So it can be used for another.
Oh, okay. So that's a great question. So therefore, let's start with the budget. So there is a budget template that will be used specifically for this one, but I'll be honest with you, you ought to keep it and save it as a file and use it in the future, because it's an Excel spreadsheet. It will roll when you add certain numbers. It'll do a lot of the rolling for you. And it's ideal if you're like really anticipating doing more grant writing, to have that kind of a template. As for the grant itself, in terms of the requirement, that will get customized, right? That's based on the questions that the Indianapolis Foundation will ask for. But the key to writing a great grant is being able to follow the instruction. So we're just going to look to see what they are saying you have to have and figure out ways to tell your story. And who's better to tell your story than you, right? And so we're going to share some tips on what you can do to pump your story up, where to go and look for some information, how your own information is probably the most powerful information that's out there. You know, you can run and get data on census and all of that, but when you've been working in the community, that's some powerful data, and we'll talk about how to use that, okay? It's all about your story. So let me jump to this real quick. So some of you are saying, I'm not a 501c3. I'm not even going to ask anybody to show their hand. If you're not a 501c3, but you've been doing great work, they've actually created a vehicle so that you can now have an opportunity to participate. And that is by partnering with a fiscal sponsor. Now, a fiscal sponsor on the feds is a little different, and I want to make sure we are all clear. It's an organization that is basically going to manage the funds when the entities are too small to go for the grant themselves, okay? But here's the thing. When you're dealing with federal money, the feds only identify one organization as the lead. So you could have a whole collaboration, but they only identify one as the lead, okay? But look what comes with that. Can everybody look at what's underlined? Any misuse of federal funds becomes the sole responsibility of the fiscal sponsor, okay? That's their language, not ours, okay? So some of you may need a fiscal sponsor, but everybody out there is not really ready to be a fiscal sponsor. So first you're going to want, and I love this point, Pam referenced this the last time, you want to look at an organization that you trust that is actually in the community, okay? You don't want to just kind of like put something out on Facebook looking for a fiscal sponsor. No, we're not trying to do that, right? We are looking for organizations that have some size, and they're going to have the ability to keep all of the financial records. Okay, that's the key with federal funding, is that it's about how you spend the money and how do you document what you spent. Okay, so you got to have an organization that is of size that has the ability to do that. Okay, so for example, let's say if your organization generated $100 last year, and there's an organization that generated 101, that might not be the ideal fiscal aid sponsor for this particular opportunity. Okay, but you're going to have to start looking at your partners now to figure out if that is something you're going to need. And again, it's about looking at who you trust that is going to be willing to work alongside you, not somebody who's going to do a grab and run, right? And so one of the safeguards that the Indianapolis Foundation has put into place is that there has to be a written agreement. Okay, and they've gone so far as to actually put a template out. Okay, so you don't even have to worry about trying to create one. Okay, and that will begin to spell out what each entity is going to do. And we'll talk some more about that during the budget workshop. I saw a hand. So his question is, whose budget goes on it? There's only one budget. So this is where it gets tricky. So if your organization is doing something, or your entity, or maybe it's you, maybe you don't have a separate organization, and you want to figure out how you can access some of the dollars, you will have to partner with another organization that has a 501c3 status, okay? That's number one. And number two, we're saying you got to be somebody that you trust, because the money, if you are awarded, the money is going to that organization. Okay? And so you have to know that the organization that is going to receive the money is going to do what you mutually agreed was going to be done with the funds. Okay? And so this is not the time to try to develop a relationship with someone if you don't know their track record. Because here's where it gets kind of tricky. If you're an organization, they can issue you a contract. So if your organization is small, they can issue you a contract and you can kind of do your work. But if you are not an organization, it's a different ballgame. So they actually have to keep track of all of the expenditures. Okay? And so it can almost look like it's their work, unless it is spelled out in the agreement. And that's why the agreement is so important, and you can't kind of skip it. Yes, ma'am? The fiscal sponsor. Yes, great question. So everything from this point, at the point that you've determined that your organization is too small and you're going to need a fiscal sponsor, everything that goes into the system is on behalf of that entity, because that is going to be the lead entity. Okay? You just don't want them adding anything until you have worked out those details. Yes. Oh, no, please.
I know that you keep saying, register for this, sign up for this. I have no idea where exactly I'm supposed to be finding this information to register.
So for the workshops?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think it's on another slide.
Oh, I'm sitting going.
I think it's on another slide. Is it? Oh, she was asking like what slide is where to register for the workshops.
Yeah, I was just saying that I missed where to sign all this stuff. Like, oh, did you register for this? Did you register for that? And
Oh,
like,
okay. So let me run it through it one more time, okay?
as all the IRS
You
stuff,
you
clear
cool
all
with it?
that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to go to the website, the Indianapolis Foundation's website, right? And all of the information regarding this opportunity, registering for workshops, all of that is actually going to be on their website. Okay? Isn't that right? Yes. Okay. Oh, let's go to the next one. Next slide. Okay. There we go. Nope.
So
Oh.
learn more on the screen, that is the website address. Okay, so elevationgrants.org will take you to the web. Yeah, I'm sorry.
What's that? You see it? Right up here? Yes. Oh. Thank you. It's all right. Other questions? Elevationgrant.org. Oh. Yes. Uh-huh.
So if we have partners
Uh-huh.
that are for profit,
Let's see.
yeah, so I just wondered if we have for profit partners, they also need a fiscal sponsor. It's not just about the size of the organization.
Yes, so for-profits are not eligible. Now, and that actually raises a good question in terms of how we're approaching, and I can't remember where we landed, for-profit partners. They would be treated as a contractor. Now, again, let me just say, and we'll talk about this on the budget, you have to be mindful of when you're having partners, and let's say you're the lead, if you're having partners, one of the things that the feds always look for is to whether you are serving as a pass-through, particularly for an entity that is not eligible for the funding. So even if you have for-profit partners, it's fine. You want to look at the amount that they're receiving relative to the amount you're receiving in other groups, because they'll look at it, right? But they will show up as a contractor on the overall budget. And there's a specific line item, and actually I think it has another sheet that will allow you to list who they are, and then it rolls over. Okay? Other questions? Yes?
Okay, so what if we apply for a first round with the empowered youth? Could we apply for another program or another, not topic, but
Category?
yeah, category for the second round?
That's a good question, but you know what? I'm going to turn this back over to Alicia because she's a guru on that. I want to make sure you guys have any more questions around how to get ready. You got to do the SAMS.gov. You got to make sure your organization is in good standings with the Internal Revenue Service and the state of Indiana, right? You're going to want to register your system in the Smart Simple website for the foundation so that you can start getting access and figuring out, particularly if you're going to be the lead, right? You're going to sign up for the budget workshop, which is Thursday, okay? Now, anything specific to the grant itself, I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia and she can answer those. But I want to make sure any other questions regarding what you have to do to get ready for the opportunity. Don't forget to register for the grant preparation clinic. Yes, ma'am.
We need to fix up some things. Like we need to take prevention off. We need to add some more things on here that we're hearing tonight. So by tomorrow evening, it should be up. So if we're not able to take real good notes. And then this recording, we're recording tonight, so we will have this uploaded, so you'll be able to listen to this again. Okay? And also the budget webinar will be recorded. So if you cannot make it, you will also have an opportunity to listen to it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And is that access also through the
Yes, ma'am.
elevation.org?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think my part is done. I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia.
Let's give her a hand.
So back to your question, Emmanuel, keep saying your last name first. I'm just gonna be transparent. We have not made a decision yet if you can apply for both rounds. Because of the requirements for reporting, you will be reporting 4 times. So if you receive funding for round 1 and 2, that is 8 times. In addition to, we are adding a compliance officer. We're gonna change the name. It's not gonna be, but it'll be somebody that will be in your business. And that is a lot of time just for one grant. And so we know that some organizations may have the ability to do that amount of implementation and have the staff to do the reporting and the admin, but a lot don't. So we have not made that decision yet. Yes, ma'am.
What type of services fall under the restoration and resilience portion? What is that exactly?
Thank you. Great question. I'm sorry I didn't finish the description of that. So we are going to allow for therapeutic as well as traditional clinical community-based programming, but we're going to expand that to community-based healing centers, recovery circles, meditation. I'm not making up, but I'm just giving you examples of the type of range that will include. So it's not just your traditional grief counseling or cognitive-based therapy sessions that our kids and individuals are getting now. These can be opportunities for celebration, okay, healing, trauma-informed practices. So, Ms. Koya, we're like Ms. Pam said, we're in discovery. So we need to figure out what's in community and who's doing the work in this space. Does that help? I miss Latavia. I know you do some of that work as well with women. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions?
Can you expound on the compliance officer? Are they a full-time partner that we have access to throughout the process of the work we're doing?
Yes. So we have not put a job description together, but this individual will be contractual with the foundation. Yes. Specifically for this grant program. It will be for all of the organizations that are awarded.
Okay.
That is a big job.
Yeah, so I have a question because we have, pardon me. Forgive me for not, and I will just stand. Yes, ma'am. We do have an in-house accountability board that does monitor quarterly, about 8 times a year, actually. So my question is, if this individual, if we have full-time access to them, can they just work alongside? Because I prefer to prevent a problem rather.
With whoever is
But I'm saying,
implementing the grant.
as we move along is my question.
What's along me?
As the program is functioning,
They
there
will
should
be
be,
with you through
that's
the
what
whole
I'm asking.
inception of the
That's my
program.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Great question.
Good evening, everyone. Question, grant award ranges, or maybe an average grant award, is that available?
Another great question that we have not come to a decision on, but right now it's, the low end is 20,000. The high range is 250K. Okay. But we're not set yet. We will have that for you on April 1st. Great question. I think Allison was pointing to me to address that. Oh, and it's for 1 year. So this is a full year. So when you get the award, which would be July 1st, your implementation would end June 30th of 2023. Okay. And in terms of your question about operating budget, so it will be, your award will be based on, in addition to, the amount of your organization's budget. So we don't want to do harm because it's a 1-year grant and you get a large amount of money, and then the following year in 2023, you don't get additional funding, then we sink your organization. So we would be also taking into account the size of your organization financially as well. But we do want to see the ability for you to grow, and the infrastructure development component piece will also be a part of that. Pam, you want to add more to that?
So one of the things that, I'll stand. So one of the things that you'll want to think about in this budget, and again, why we want you to come on Thursday at 10 o'clock on Zoom, is because for some of you, it will be about figuring out what are some of the indirect costs that need to be covered and what does that mean. Some of you are like, I don't know what the term is. And I know we've used a lot of terminology tonight, and we don't mean to offend anybody by just kind of blowing through it. But what you will see on the website is actually a glossary of a lot of the terms that we've used. And when we get into the actual workshops, we'll begin to break it down. But one of the challenges for a lot of organizations is that you see a funding opportunity, and let's say it's $25,000, and you take all $25,000 and you put it directly into the program. And you don't think about the fact that you have facilities, you got insurance, you have other what are called indirect costs. And so there are some restrictions associated with this, but there is the opportunity to be able to include that in your application. And so we want to make sure we're giving you guidance as to how to do it correctly. But this will be a turning point for some of you who have never done that in any of your proposals. And so a lot of what we're going to walk through with you is things that you can apply for other grants. This is a one-year grant opportunity. Wonderful opportunity. That's the nice thing about federal money, is that you can get a nice chunk, but you can't get comfortable with it because you got to keep thinking about where's the next opportunity. But being able to say that you've secured this one will begin to open up some doors for some others, particularly as you're using the tools that we're going to share with you. Okay, so we tried to make them as simple as possible so that you don't have to, say that, well, I got to go to school and get a degree in it. And we tried to make it as simple as possible. All you need to do is kind of commit your time and attention to it, and hopefully we'll walk you through it. But that is yet another opportunity for the indirect cost. Was there?
The one thing I want to add to that, I don't know if Alicia, I was distracted, I'm sorry, you may have said this, but in the infrastructure development component of this, a lot of when we started to put this together, the framework, the conversations with the city, knowing what's going on, is our belief is after $45 million has been expended into the community in a different way, there's more sustainability that has been created from a community-driven, resident-driven, resident-sustained level. So it was a really, for us as, Alicia and I, quite frankly, I mean, we've shed a couple of tears about the hope that we have in this because it's personal. It's not just our job. And so we really do, when we're talking about this infrastructure, like this is just the launching, then there's the grant writing. And then there's a whole nother framework that we've been working on for like 6 or 7 months that has to do with that infrastructure development, those workshops, those getting in actually with you all and your neighbors. Not in this whole essence of fiscal sponsor, that was going on before this grant as well. We were already trying to think as a foundation, you shouldn't be shoved into having to have a 501c3 to get resources. If you're doing the work, then you're doing the work. So there still has to be, though, that accounting and the infrastructure. And so to me, for your question, Tyrone, it wouldn't just be only your operating, but what's your plan for infrastructure? So which is why Allison shared what she shared, just at a minimum, do you have that admin person who's going to support this grant, this accounting? Do you have an accountant? Do you have the bare basics? But when you start talking about doing large amount of programming that you haven't done yet, and you got 4 other staff that you're about to line up because they're I wouldn't start there. That's not the place to start. That may be the place to start maybe in year 2, but that's not the place to start in year 1. It's like, what fundamentally am I missing an opportunity to scale my work? Not blow it out of the park right off the bat, but where am I able to scale my work, learn from what I'm doing, and create that solid infrastructure that when I come, not to the Indianapolis Foundation only, but when I go to another funder, I have learned a lot in this process, because that's really the basis for what we're doing here. It's not just simply about the funds. It is how do we come alongside, support, and learn together. So I think that's really important. We're talking about $45 million. This is so much more than the funding. This is what are we actually utilizing this funding to do to build in the community that's built by the community, for the community, and we come alongside and say, now this is how we'll support community development. There's a lot of really good things, amazing things happening that many